So thank you so much, John, for joining us. I was hoping you could maybe start out by kind of giving a little bit of an introduction and to yourself and kind of context for how you were engaged, what you were doing with SYRCL around that kind of pivotal moment of Wild and Scenic South Yuba.
Sure. My name is John Regan, and I was volunteering with SYRCL. My good friend Sean Garvey had become the executive director recently. I have a history and experience in running political campaigns, and so I was hired as the Wild and Scenic Campaign coordinator, campaign manager. So I sort of ran all of the strategy, communications, organizing a lot of SYRCL's work, and then was lobbying in the state capitol for the bill.
Great. So yeah, really kind of taking some of that energy here locally and really bringing it to Sacramento.
That's exactly what we did.
Yes, it was. So looking back, can you talk a little bit about kind of what was happening in the community, what was happening on the river that helped go from, hey, we need to do something to protect this river, to Wild and Scenic is that thing?
Yeah, it's hard to even remember, but at the time, the South Yuba was vulnerable to new dams. We had learned that a company could come out from outside of our community, outside of our state, even outside our country, and apply for a license to place a dam on the South Yuba River, and it was very likely there wasn't a damn thing we could do to stop it. Then what happened was the Yuba County Water, so there was an existential threat. There was a permanent, ongoing existential threat to the South Yuba from new dams. And then the Yuba County Water Agency, now the Yuba Water Agency, completed a study of past studies done of dam proposals and dam sites in the Yuba watershed. And there were two dams that could specifically impact the South Yuba River. One was at Parks Bar, and that would have inundated Englebright Dam, put it under a couple hundred feet of water, and it would have flooded the state park at Bridgeport. The second dam site was at Edwards Crossing, and that would have flooded the entire river canyon all the way up to and including part of the town of Washington. This caused a bit of a bombshell.
Yeah.
I remember the day the headlines that the story ran in the paper that the Yuba County Water Agency had renewed these studies of new dams in the South Yuba. But there's an old observation that a threat is also an opportunity. And I remember sitting down with Sean Garvey and a couple others, and we thought, we've got to stop this. South Yuba, the Wild and Scenic River designation is the only thing that will do it. And now we have a reason to do it now. They gave us the opportunity to get the legislation done. SYRCL had previously sponsored legislation to do it. It had failed. But we had recently seen the election of a 4-to-1 Board of Supervisors, an environmental Board of Supervisors, in which 4 members had explicitly endorsed Wild and Scenic designation and opposed new dams on the South Yuba. That also gave us legitimacy because now we could get the county of Nevada to sponsor the bill.
Right.
It wasn't just going to be SYRCL, it was going to be local government officials, and that carries a great deal of currency in Sacramento.
Yeah, so that sounds like, this existential threat of dams that then turned into a very real, no, here's the map.
Yep.
And then it's just like, okay, well, what tools do we have? And Wild and Scenic is that tool to really say, nope, it's not going to happen here.
Yeah. And I remember sitting down with topo maps, and we taped together topo maps, looked at the studies, looked at the elevation of the flood pool that was in the studies, because they're very detailed engineering studies. And we sat there with yellow highlighters going all the way up the river canyon. And I remember us getting to the town of Washington and realizing, holy shit, this will actually put Washington underwater.
Right.
And we were talking to some people who knew how these things worked, and they said, if it's going to flood part of a town, they're going to move the town. They're going to take the town out.
Right.
You can't just have buildings that might be impacted in a flood stage. The entire town was under threat, and people couldn't believe it. Imagine from Edwards Crossing, 13 miles all the way up to the town of Washington.
Yeah.
It made it very real. All of a sudden, hundreds of property owners with land along the river canyon were threatened. Some people said, well, then I'll have lakefront property. And we said, well, yeah, on some days you'll have lakefront property, and then on other days, the water might be 100 feet from
Right.
your property.
It's going to be mud.
Yeah, it's going to be mud, and you're going to be looking at a bathtub ring.
Right.
You know, so it made the threat real. The big benefit we'd had was that SYRCL had done a lot of members of SYRCL and volunteers had a practice run. They had tried to do it a few years earlier. They did a lot of organizing work. There was a property owners group that had been assembled by Susan Levitz and others. They had done a lot of communications and education in the community, so they debunked a lot of the stuff that the property rights people and the pro-dam folks had assembled. So a lot of the groundwork was laid.
Yeah. So can you talk a little bit about the fight? And clearly there's a lot of education and outreach and work happening here, but then there's also conversations and you sort of taking that fight to Sacramento. What were some of the challenges that you faced there, that people faced up here, to kind of get this legislation to a point where it could be heard?
Yeah, well, so first of all, locally, it was debunking a lot of the myths and a lot of the make-believe stuff that the property rights people put out. I mean, they had everything that if you owned a house on the River Canyon, you wouldn't be able to paint it. You would lose your home. The government was going to come in and condemn your land. You couldn't plant a garden. They were constantly throwing up bogus stories and scare tactics that we had to take the time to debunk them. But it was also a great process because every challenge they put in our way was our then opportunity to get a new supporter. And we saw it over and over and over again. When we proved them wrong, when we showed how they had lied or exaggerated, we had a new supporter. And that person might be a property owner or a business owner, a local elected official. So we were constantly getting stronger. So it was almost like forging a sword,
Right.
The more they hammered at us, the stronger we got.
Right.
And the sharper we got. In Sacramento, the big challenge was, look, we had no juice. We had Republican assembly member. We were represented by a Republican assembly member, a Republican state senator, both of whom opposed Wild and Scenic.
Yeah.
A Republican Congress member. We had our board of supervisors, which was really important. So we were able to get the resolution passed at the board level, and then we were very methodical. Then we went down to Sacramento. We got our sponsor, State Senator Byron Scher. His staffer, Jeff Shelito, had worked on the previous bill. He's a river rafter.
Yep.
So then we went down to Sacramento, and all of a sudden we started finding these allies.
Right.
River people are everywhere. We found people who were the chief of staff of Senator John Burton, recently departed John Burton. Allison Harvey was a river rat. So when you have the president pro tem's chief of staff helping you out,
Right.
we started finding juice.
Yeah, and it sounds like that is sort of this building of community there as well, and certainly local community up here is a big part of that. But how did the community here, the community down there of River Rats, how did that kind of help move things forward and get these everyday people a little bit more involved?
Yeah. Well, getting people from this community involved was not a challenge.
Right.
For a lot of people, the South Yuba is the heart and soul of the community.
Right.
It's the reason why people moved here. It's why I moved here. It's
Yeah.
why I stayed here. My daughter learned to swim on the South Yuba. Everybody had stories like that. What SYRCL was able to do was then focus all of that energy and that love, find people's talents, and plug them in. Oh, you're a property owner. Go talk to the other property owners. You're a business owner. Go talk to your clients and other business owners. Or you're a realtor. Go and talk to people in the real estate community and property owners and tell them why protecting the South Yuba protects their property values. So SYRCL was that was really, really important, finding people's talents, finding their strengths, and giving them an opportunity to put those strengths and talents to work. As you know, it's like people want to help. Everybody wants to help.
Right.
They just want to be told how to do it and what to do.
Yeah.
They already know how to do it. They just want to have see that their efforts and their talent will be put to good use. So they were all ready. Going down and working the Capitol was just a lot of shoe leather, frankly.
Okay. Yeah.
We lobbied. We met with every member of the state legislature who would meet up with us. We would go down for full days of meetings, back-to-back meetings. We enlisted the help of lobbyists, staffers. We met with Democrats, we met with Republicans.
Yeah.
And some of those meetings would be difficult. But I'll tell you, going in to meet with a friend it was always uplifting and
Right.
reassuring.
Yeah.
You know, you think, hey, we got another vote. Going into a meeting with an opponent taught us just as much.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. I mean, it's an old engineering adage that you learn so much more from your failures than
Yeah.
your successes, and so those hard conversations, it forces you to refine, it forces
Yeah.
you to reflect on that message. And
Yeah. And we found river people everywhere.
Right.
I can't tell you how many times we would be sitting down for a meeting with a staffer, and behind them would be a photo. And if they were a river rat, they would have river photos.
Right.
And there'd be this close-up photo of this guy kayaking, with the foaming water there, and we'd think, we're with kin.
Yeah, exactly. We can make this.
Yeah,
This is going to be easy.
And they would be non-committal. Again, happened more than once. Even a Democratic staffer would say, I can't commit to how my member's going to vote. We just have to see how this goes. But he was a river raft guide for 5 years after college, and we went,
All right.
And he's like, somebody would be walking us out of their office and say, by the way, I've kayaked to South Yuba about a dozen times. It's my favorite river.
Right.
And we think, it always felt really good to get that, that uplifting
kind of vote.
kind of, we knew we had a vote. So
Yeah, that's great.
even though it was tight.
Yeah, and bringing this community there as well. One of the things that we've heard a lot about is the buses of students and buses of people
It's
to
fantastic.
hold that and kind of bring that energy and that enthusiasm and that love down there.
One of the best memory I have, I think, of the entire campaign, aside from when we won, was Lobby Day. We got hundreds of people down there, kids, parents, seniors. We stormed the state capitol. We had meetings, hundreds of meetings throughout the state capitol. They were handing out material and pretty pictures of the South Yuba. It was so important. I mean, having that kind of visible support and people who were really committed to the bill. It put a face on the bill for
Right.
a lot of people.
Yeah.
It was fantastic, and that was really, truly a victory for the community. It gave people an opportunity to do something. It got them excited.
Yeah.
They really, people already felt a huge ownership, but it's kind of intellectual. If you're sitting up here in Nevada City or Grass Valley and you're hearing about what's going on in the Capitol and you're hearing about these committee votes and these things happening, it rings different when you've sat in the committee room, that hearing room.
Yeah.
And we had committee hearings where the room would be filled
Right.
with SYRCL supporters,
Right.
people there for our bill.
Yeah. And phone banks and calling in
Phone
and just
banks.
really giving color to a process
Yeah.
that is opaque both directions, right?
We take it for granted now. We take email for granted now. Email was kind of still a new thing back then, and using email was an equalizer for us. There was a particular occasion when a Democrat, a conservative Democrat from a conservative district, had indicated they weren't inclined to vote for the bill. They were wobbling, but they were getting a lot of pressure from farm interests and water interests. So we had this statewide activist, set of groups and activists and voters who had members in every
Right.
legislative district. And the word went out to members of rafting communities, environmental groups, local leaders, local electeds in that member's district.
Right.
We sent out emails. Call Assemblywoman, not going to say her name, but so-and-so, urge her to vote for SB 496.
Right.
It was about 2 hours later that we got a call from a friendly staffer in the state capitol and said, please call off the dogs. She got the point.
Yeah.
She said, their phones are literally ringing off the hook. They can't do any business in that legislative office. They haven't taken a call in the last 2 hours that doesn't concern the South Yuba. And it was impressive, but we also thought, like, oh God, wow, really? And he said, yeah, the request had been passed along through member to member. Please stop. We got it. So
That's pretty exciting. That's fun kind of like, sorry, not sorry.
Sorry,
Like,
not sorry.
Yeah.
We were like, remember that the next time the vote comes up.
Yep,
I
exactly.
mean, sometimes you put that, I don't know, whether it's I don't want to say a gun or a knife, but
Right.
you just kind of sheathe the weapon. And ours was community engagement.
Right.
And not just at a local community, but at a statewide level.
Exactly. You've got to be able to show that willpower.
Oh, yeah.
So let's kind of fast forward ever so briefly in time and talk about that win and that moment when you sort of felt like, or knew that you'd officially won and the designation was there.
Yeah.
What was that like?
It was incredible, obviously. We won every significant vote by one vote.
Right.
One vote.
Yeah.
We were one of the last bills passed in the state assembly. It was the last night of the session. So we were down there at this crossroads, these quarters in the assembly outside of the state, the assembly floor. They call it Gucci Gulch after the lobbyists who congregate there. None of us were in Gucci, but we were passing notes onto the floor. And I remember an ally was sitting in the speaker's chair, called the roll, and when we got to 41 votes, bang, that mallet came down. They weren't messing around. They got to 41, the roll closed, bill has passed. And man, I was standing there next to the lobbyist who'd been hired by the water agencies, the highest paid lobbying firm in the state. And I was standing right next to him when that gavel came down. And it was fantastic. We shook hands, and I said, I hope we get to fight on the same side of something, which we later did. We then went down the hall and opened a really good bottle of scotch to celebrate. And we were told they could smell it all the way down the hallway at Gucci Gulch. The real moment wasn't until the governor signed the bill.
Right. Yeah.
And
some months later.
it was some months later.
Made you sweat it a little bit.
He sure did. I was in my car. I had taken the day off to go hiking in Tahoe with my dog, and I got a call. I'd been out of cell range all day, and I was in my car driving through Tahoe City, and I got a call telling me the governor had just signed the bill, and we had made it. And that's when it was real. That really was when it became real.
Yeah. And interesting, I mean, one of the threads to this story that I like is through this process, there's that win, and then there's this 1 year delay before it goes into effect to kind of do a little bit and get a little bit of the necessary collaboration and kind of give and take of politics set.
And it was, at the time it didn't feel like a great thing because we just thought, man, we got to win our bill. We got to protect the river. But we also realized that the South Yuba was never going to be safe from new dams so long as downstream communities weren't safe from flooding.
Right.
And so part of the understanding was that we would help get $90 million in non-dam flood control in a state water bond, specifically for flood control for the downstream residents in Yuba City, Marysville area. That's a good thing.
Right.
That was an absolute good thing. And we then orchestrated a campaign, and I managed that campaign, the Yes on Prop 13. Yeah, it wasn't that Prop 13, it was a different Prop 13, for Flood Control Now. And that's what we called it, the Flood Control Now campaign in Nevada, Yuba, and Sutter County. And so we barnstormed down there. And suddenly we were lobbying and campaigning alongside the very people who had opposed us.
Yeah.
And it was a great way to develop relationships with them.
Right.
With the water agency, with the assemblyman who had opposed us, and our state senator who had voted against us. We got a chance to be on the same side as those folks and establish those early relationships. And it was the first time that Nevada County, Yuba County, and Sutter County had all voted in favor of a bond measure.
Right.
First time.
Yeah.
And we did that together. And that helped establish relationships with them that continued.
Yeah, and builds, it gives, have to imagine, it gives some legitimacy and some trust to, an environmental NGO, which can be seen as just kind of contrarian, defined by no.
Yeah, it really is. Winning Wild and Scenic and then helping pass the water bond meant that SYRCL wasn't just a band of rabble-rousers and dance party throwers
Right.
and skinny dipping
Yeah.
river freaks, you know.
Yeah.
I mean, we were all that.
Right, but you could be more.
Not just that. We would invite people, hey, come up to the South Yuba.
Yeah.
And you can swim naked.
Right.
Oh, I'm not so sure. It's like, yeah,
Try it.
try it. Don't knock it till you tried it. But it really established SYRCL as a very serious organization and one that should be taken seriously, that began to see itself differently, and then grew into the organization it is today.
Right.
You know, where we're using every tool. We're not just contrarian, always complaining, always shouting about something. Man, we're using litigation, we're using policy, we're using science, we're using legislation. It really established SYRCL as somebody that you didn't want to mess with and you wanted to work with.
Right.
And that we would be a reliable partner, that we could be effective and effective on just a statewide level. Wild and Scenic was the most controversial, hard-fought environmental bill of the session. That says a lot in California.
Yeah.
And it dealt with water, which is the most
Yes.
difficult, you know, as the old saying goes, whiskey's for drinking,
Yep,
water's for fighting over. It's so true. And I remember when we had our first meetings in the state capitol with staff, and we said, we're just this little 39-mile stretch of river. We're just this little river. We'll skate right through. No one will notice.
Yeah.
And one of the staffers said, it's about water. Nothing about water in California is simple. And he predicted on day one, you're going to get tied to every other water issue in this state by the end of the year. And they were right.
Yeah, interesting. All right, so today, 25 years later, what do you think this designation means for the river, for this community, and kind of the future?
Well, first and foremost, obviously, we protected a river.
Right. Yeah, it's still a river, not a
From
lake.
the dam. It's a river, not a reservoir. Yeah. And so it's like we saved the life of a family member and a friend.
Yeah.
And that just can't be overstated or overestimated. It's really hard to think a dam could have been built on the South Yuba. It could have happened, and we could not have stopped it. That threat's gone. I think, as I said, importantly, SYRCL became a different organization and a much more potent and powerful organization as a result of Wild and Scenic. Our reach now extends around the world. Mm-hmm. It inspired the creation of a film festival, right? The Wild and Scenic Film Festival is called the Wild and Scenic Environmental Film Festival. And we became not just a more powerful organization, we became an inspiration to other organizations and activists and people everywhere. We started getting calls from people who wanted to save their river, or were going to run a legislative campaign. They wanted to know, how did we do it? What was our secret? So the immediate impact was to save the river, and then the downstream impacts that came pretty quickly was other organizations and other people looking to SYRCL as a success story and a source of inspiration and mentorship.
Yeah, I love it. So if it works for you, I've got one more question.
Yeah.
As much personal research and interest as anything. So thinking about, another campaign, and it could be fish passage, it could be wild and scenic status, and thinking about the process. Given the state of the world today, do you think the recipe for success is more or less the same, or is it different?
Boy, it's easy to be cynical.
Yeah, it certainly is.
And, we realized another old saying during the Wild and Scenic Campaign that, a lie can travel around the world before the truth gets its pants on. In this day and age, with the rise of social media and almost just a malignant kind of misinformation industry out there, it really can be very difficult for people to find out what's true and to counter a lie. That's why community is so important. Yeah. Because it means that people can touch it. There's a tangibility to things.
Yeah.
And when you have a local community dedicated to fighting for what is important to that local community, man, that is a suit of armor that the most cynical lie in the world will have trouble penetrating. So I think that's why organizations like SYRCL and communities like ours are really critical. And I'm not being naive about it, but it really is the last best hope for activism.
Yeah.
Big organizations with big sweeps and national or international influence are necessary. They're valuable partners. They're fighting big fights. They're also uniquely vulnerable. So it really will often come down to local communities, local organizations like SYRCL that are immediate to their sphere of interest, influence, and concern. And so long as we're here, nobody will ever fuck with the Yuba.
Yeah.
And there are communities and organizations like ours all over the world.
Yeah. Yes, there are. Yeah. Well, I appreciate that, especially knowing sort of what you do for a living, because that's sort of been my take as well, is that, contrary to perhaps the obvious answer of like, well, it looks different because the internet didn't campaign. And I go like, God, no, that community aspect, that getting people in the room is even more important, because you can never win on the internet. There's no win there. But if you can convince a person who can convince their neighbor, then they are insulated from the internet, and you actually have to get out of the technology sphere to do it.
Yeah, and it's always about the fundamentals. Those will never change. Know what you're talking about. Get it right.
Yeah.
Because you can still damage your credibility. If you get something wrong or you don't know what you're talking about, you can lose your credibility. So I still think knowing your issue, knowing it well, knowing how to communicate about it, enlisting allies, these are the fundamentals. I don't think they'll ever go out of style.
Yeah.
It's just still be some days where you feel like you're Sisyphus.
Yes. But that also will never go out of style.
Someday the boulder is running back over your toe and you're like, oh, dang it. And then, hey, that's when you call in your neighbor and they help push that boulder a little bit back uphill. Yeah.
Well, thank you so much. This was, has been the tradition so far.
This has been a blast. This has been a blast.
Yeah. Well, I'm like.